It is Lauren Southern returning to political discourse online. We're super unhappy about it. We're like, oh fuck, just when we thought things were looking good, Lauren fucking Southern comes back. Well, apparently the universe isn't quite as cruel as we thought it is. In fact, the universe is a fair being, if it is, you know, sentient. Because today, while we have had one blight brought back to us, we have had another cured. Multiple, in fact. For starters, you love to see it. You love to see it for a moment. But the gods have truly blessed us twice on this day. For if you look up Stefan Molyneux on YouTube, nothing. Stefan Molyneux has been banned. Who's next is the top video. Him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Him on other channels is all that comes up. Him on Reason TV. How pretentious. Yeah, Stefan Molyneux has been permanently banned from YouTube. PewDiePie being on YouTube, at least PewDiePie isn't streaming on DLive, and his fans aren't clicking off of his stream and watching, like, Nick Fuentes or the Kill stream now instead, once PewDiePie's done streaming. It is good when these people get banned and exiled to these irrelevant, unknown, shitty platforms. It is a death sentence for them. It's a win for us. There's a reason why these people get so worked up over, like, the idea of corporate censorship. You know, how they say that it's censorship whenever one of them gets banned from Twitter? That's getting censored to them because they've never actually experienced what it's actually like to have your opinion censored, you know, by the government or by the state. So they think that being deplatformed by a private organization is censorship, and it's not. Being deplatformed by a private organization is censorship, and it's not, 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 to pay your rent. But at the end of the day, you no longer have any power over the normie masses anymore, because nobody is on BitChute that's like a normie that isn't radicalized to the right already. Who's watching shit on BitChute who isn't already a Nazi? What YouTube normies are going over here to watch Stefan Molyneux? On top of that,
Parliament Hill, no big show this year, but hundreds are using Canada Day to protest. There are a variety of different groups here, some with ties to the far right, according to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Their messages are different. Many are anti-Trudeau, some against COVID-19 restrictions.
In Canada Day be cancelled. The new movement is being led by Indigenous rights groups at a time when many are demanding an end to racism. As Jeff Semple reports, protesters say they don't feel connected to Canada's colonial history and the injustices that have been carried out.
Riley Yesno sure does.
Canada is something that's happened to us.
The Indigenous former member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council says Canada Day should be marked with somber reflection.
You have an obligation to, really know this history, to honor this history in a way that, the people who did not benefit from colonialism are asking you to.
The hashtag Cancel Canada Day was trending online in certain restaurants or hotels. The recent Black Lives Matter protest in his hometown felt like a culmination of his life's work.
After 82 years, and this is the first time I've seen so many people come out in the community and support.
He says he's proud to be a Canadian at a moment like this. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Another symbol of racism and oppression in the U.S. South has been removed. The city of Richmond, Virginia ordered a statue of...
But for blacks and many others, it promotes the darkest racist sentiments in America.
I know firsthand what it feels like to see a Confederate flag and pretend it doesn't have a racist, violent, or oppressive overtone. It screams hate, and it hurts me to my core.
A civil war. It fought in part to keep slavery in America. Generals to removing racial stereotypes like Aunt Jemima products. The wave of change for racial justice has been strikingly public, part of their culture.
It's not a racial thing, it's a heritage thing.
But that's what's so important about Mississippi's decision. It's taking down a symbol of racial disharmony from the last highest official level in any state.
I knew we could not continue to operate under the negative pall of that flag. I knew we couldn't do that.
For many Americans, the Confederate flag in Mississippi held a place of prominence that it didn't deserve and will no longer have. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
So, what's my advice? What do I want you guys to do? Next time you see some Nazi on Twitter that like calls you the F slur and tells you to kill yourself, or you see a Nazi video on YouTube, just a blatantly Nazi video, don't just leave and move on with your day. Report them. You're not breaking any rules by reporting them. You're not doing anything bad. That's what you're supposed to do. They're breaking YouTube. Once it's done for long enough, they get axed. And then it's a big win for us. Honestly, even I'm getting nervous. If these people keep getting banned, what am I going to have to cover on stream? Although, honestly, that's probably a good problem to have. To be completely honest with you, that's probably a good problem to have. Anyway.
Evidence and reaches my own conclusion. I actually think there's a lot of really bad stuff going on in social justice circles lately, from substituting weird, alienating jargon for plain English, to celebrating activists' ugliest impulses, to crusading against trivial or nonsensical offenses, to single-mindedly focusing on some pet social justice issue at the expense of all nuance. But the truth is that you can find people behaving terribly within any movement. On both sides of this debate and every other, there will be those who act and think in petty, selfish, and small-minded ways. That's human nature, not feminism. The intellectually responsible thing to do is try to filter all the nonsense out, and address only the strongest arguments that each side has to offer.
Okay, I agree that there are certain parts of the left that are viable. There are certain parts of the left that we should embrace. However, there's many aspects or certain variants of leftism that we should deny and forget about. And the thing that you don't understand is that left isn't monolithic. We are a diverse movement. In fact, I wouldn't say that we are really a movement because we're so divided. There's different ideological divergences and different...
Also radicalize people through direct action, protests, things like doing what I do, like making content.
Yeah. Once again, fighting the war on drugs, fighting imperialism, fighting, for workers' rights and LGBT and so on, while backing a candidate who is against all of that and will frustrate you at every corner when given the chance and when given the levers of power.
I mean, I don't think he's even talking about working class. Like, I can't, somebody pull up a clip of him saying the words working class. I don't think I've ever heard it more than 5 times, ever. Okay, I don't watch all his streams, but, it's not said proportionally very much.
Radicalizes people to the left. That is how we influence real political change. The problem is, that's not how fascism works.
Oh, this dude is so funny. When he talks about fascism, it's like he hasn't read anything since his 10th grade history textbook. And still, that's a 10th grade history textbook.
Fascism can be achieved electorally. It has been. Historically, fascists, almost every...
this part, it sounds like it's extreme speculation right there.
Go ahead and let it run. I have a response to this. I have something to say about this.
Was elected. I'm pretty sure Hitler was elected, right? Or the party
stop right there.
There we go. That's hilarious. I'm pretty sure.
Hitler did not win the popular vote. He was put in power by the Weimar governments.
Yeah.
I forget exactly who the cabal of people were that put him in power.
It was basically a mix of generals and the capitalist class.
Yeah, no, the bourgeois straight up installed Adolf Hitler. He was not elected by popular vote.
It wasn't a majority. It was what's the word when you have
plurality?
get plurality there.
Yeah. No.
And Mussolini, he just marched into Rome and he's like, "Give me the government." And the king's like, "Oh, as long as you don't depose me, you're cool." Like that.
Yeah, and other fascists did not take power democratically. Like what? Pinochet took power in a coup.
I mean, most of these fascist dictators, whether it's in the Middle East or in Latin America, or they're like installed by the CIA, pretty much. That's the kind of post 1950. That's the primary way fascists have been installed, is through the CIA.
Oh yeah, no, the CIA has carried water for fascism around the globe for decades. But anyways.
Like, it's almost always fascists.
Real quick. The issue isn't that lefties can't do it. The issue is that bourgeois parliamentarism is an extension of the dictatorship of capital. The reason why we have things like a two-party system or a three-party system is really so we can't really hold the overall system accountable. Those damn Democrats, next time I'll vote Republican. Or, those damn Republicans, next time I'll vote Democrat. Like, this is one of the reasons why I'm in favor of a one-party system. That way you can hold like that one party accountable for whenever it fucks up.
What's interesting that I find in a lot of voter, like, it's interesting in America, you see like that tribalism quite a bit. It's like team sports basically. But in Canada, what I notice is there are a lot of like, you could say like centrist voters who basically flip between liberal and conservative on a dime, depending on like who was the last person. They just want to get like a new person in, basically. And it feels very inconsequential. Anyway, we'll keep going. I could do a whole hour talk on that.
Electoralism has basically become and will always be our way of trying to prevent fascists from taking power, while we try to progress society further left and more progressive. And that is why I advocate for people to vote for Biden against Trump in November if you're American.
Oof. There we go. Any comments before we like dig into like the core of his argument?
Yeah, we're gonna hear plenty of dumb takes later, so I think we should just roll with it.
But just like, look at that face. He's like, I know I've sold out all my values that I never even had in the first place.
If there are genetics involved or other environmental factors that we don't as yet know or can control for, it's incredibly bigoted either against the black community or everyone else for things that are beyond all of our control. And that to me is, I don't want people looking down at the black community. I don't want everyone saying that we have this magic answer called racism that explains everything, because it doesn't. It doesn't. And, you know, it's different in a way because
why do you think you're so passionate about this topic particularly? Because I was even thinking when I listened to Charles Murray on Sam's podcast, and I thought it was a great conversation. And obviously, as they're doing it, you can feel they're wading into things that it's uncomfortable to talk about, as we're doing right now. But I noticed that immediately after, the usual cast of characters and Salon, I think, and all the usual nonsense websites, again, just pouring on the accusations of racism, and now Sam's a white extremist or whatever just the nonsense is. So I think a lot of people just view this as just the opportunity cost on this is just too high to even wade into it. But you obviously don't.
I mean, this is going to sound self-serving. I'm aware of this ahead of time, but I'm going to be straight up with you, man. I want to solve problems in society. I want to fix things in society, and I don't. For the life of me, I cannot understand how we fix things by ignoring facts. Fundamentally, I cannot understand how we're going to ignore things, how we could solve anything by ignoring facts. Maybe there is a fix. Maybe there is something that can be done. I'm sure there is something that can be done. But if we don't even acknowledge the problem, how are we going to solve anything? And I find that the plight of, and it's not just a black community, but the plight of communities around the world and in the Western countries is dire. And we are currently tearing ourselves apart as a society, looking for the scapegoats for these group differences. And the science is very clear at the moment about what what the problem is. We don't know, again, all of the causes and so on, but I'm sure we could find it pretty quickly. But if we are going to self-destruct as a society if we continue to have this incredible witch hunt for racism and sexism and all kinds, like if we're just looking in the wrong place and we're going to tear ourselves apart. Because this is not like the difference between the world being flat and the world being round. It's not like the difference is the sun or the earth, the center of the solar system. You can be a farmer either way. But if this is like our big thing and we are screaming and turning over stones and screaming racism and destroying people's lives and massive government programs designed to fix everything and propagandizing children that their entire history and tearing down statues, everyone's a racist. If it's wrong, we are destroying ourselves through ignorance. And that, for the society that we have and the information technology that we have and the communications ability we have, for us to self-destruct through ignorance of scientific facts is unprecedented in human history. You know, the Roman Empire didn't collapse because they thought the world was flat, you know, but if we look at what's going on in Europe and population displacements and movement and so on, if we don't understand the basic science behind what is going on, it matters. It really matters about where society is going to go. Because if we ignore facts, you know, it's like you got some weird lump on your body and, I'm not going to see a doctor, I'm going to walk it off, you know, I'm sure it's going to be fine, you know, I'll switch to decaf, everything. I'll never switch to decaf,
Turmeric,
by the way.
I think, is the answer to everything.
Yeah, it's some oil.
Yeah.
But if you ignore reality, I mean, reality just wipes you out. And so I am very passionate about it because, you know, I think too, you know, I mean, I'm a father. I don't want my daughter growing up with everyone screaming racist at her. And they're going to, unless we try and figure out what the facts are.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, I can feel the passion coming out of you when you talk about it. And it's just interesting because I see so many people try to wade into this. And then eventually they just are like, I can't do it. I don't want to deal with the blowback. But you've put your position out there, and I'm happy to discuss this again, you know, in a couple months, and we can.
Well, and again, people, you know, if you can prove me wrong, I am beyond thrilled. I will apologize to everyone. Although, again, having had all the experts on, I'm on firm ground. Again, I'm no scientist, but I've had the scientists on.
Yeah. Well, it's a good segue to your book, The Art of the Argument: Western Civilization's Last Stand. Now, I had Douglas Murray on. Are you familiar with Douglas?
Oh, yeah.
So I had Douglas on about 2 months ago, and his book is called The Strange Death of Europe.
Yeah.
So you're both sort of talking about the same thing, but at first what you're talking about here is that we don't even know how to argue properly. We don't even know how to have conversations properly. It's a good jump off of exactly what you just ended.
Very well negotiated, very well navigated with this. Yeah.
How about that, huh? We almost know what we're doing around here, right? What do we do to strengthen? I mean, the basic premise of this. What do we do to strengthen our arguments?
We're always going to have disagreements, and the question is how we're going to resolve them. And there's really only two ways: we reason or we use force. They're the only two ways that things get done, things get dealt with. We either, the two of us, you know, if we say, well, we want to go to a particular restaurant. You know, I mean, we have to submit to where that restaurant is and go in that direction, you know? I mean, we have to have some way that we subjugate our will to power. And the traditional way in the West, post-Socratic, with a few large breaks in between, and we may be in one of them right now, I think we are, has been, okay, if I make a better, more rational argument, if my argument is rational and sound and the premises and blah, blah, and the empirical evidence supports me, you agree that we're both submitting to this third party called reality, truth, reason, evidence, right? And that way, you and I can meet in reality, and we can both subjugate our will to power according to an objective standard. Scientists do it, mathematicians do it, engineers do it all the time. There's a third party called reality, objectivity, scientific method, whatever, right? And we have lost that third standard. The third standard, or the objective standard, used to be religious texts. You know, for a long time under Catholicism, it was what the priest said, what the Pope said, that was infallible. You know, Martin Luther comes along with the printing press and it all collapses into the Reformation and religious war, and eventually you get a separation of church and state. But if we don't have that third party to adjudicate our disputes, we end up with you and I battling each other like two pieces of paper being pushed together. You know, we can't, one of us is going to have to buckle under on another one. And that's where you get all this bullying, this escalation, this pulling fire alarms, you know, throwing fake blood at people and hitting people with bike locks and so on. You get that when people aren't able to find this objective third party to subjugate their will to power, their will to dominance for. And if we lose that, we lose everything.
Yeah, so it seems to me that right now everyone knows we've cordoned ourselves off these days, and because of social media, you only follow news sources that cater to on. So, but if we can't agree on basic facts, which really is what you're talking about, we can only do the dance of logic and reason and really arguing your point if we can agree on some basic principles.
Yeah.
We seem to be veering into territory right now where we can't agree on that. You think there's a way to correct that? Before we get to, it's the stuff before the argument.
I mean, I had a caller in to my show recently. It's a black guy called into the show. We had a great conversation, and he was saying that there's lots of people in his community who genuinely believe that Mike Brown was shot execution style in the back by a racist cop. And he wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Spoiler, right? He wasn't. Yeah. It's very well established.
This has been debunked many times.
And so if there are groups who have these beliefs, and there are other groups who have more accurate or empirical beliefs, people have to submit their preferences to objectivity. That's, I mean, I'm a universalist. This is the philosophy gig, right? You have to come up with universals that people are willing to submit to. Because, the old thing, nature to be controlled must be obeyed. You don't get, and if you just make up your own standards of gravity, you're not going to get very far. But we do have to passionately commit ourselves to submission. Because right now, I don't know if you've ever had this in your life. I've had people in my life where I didn't want to submit to them because it felt like a personal loss. Like a personal,
we've all got egos.
I don't want to, you're going to win, and I don't. And when I sort of relax and say, okay, well, I have these positions, but they're based on reason and evidence, and I don't lose if somebody teaches me something better, I win, right? I mean, if you go in the wrong way and you stop someone and say, oh, you got to go the other way, you don't say, you're contradicting me, you bastard. And you say, well, good, now I get to go where I want to go. But we have to have those objective standards. And back to where we started, Dave, we have atheists who are not, I think, focusing as hard as they could on bringing forward these objective standards. Atheists, again, should be all over the race and IQ stuff because that's science as far as we know it at the moment. But they don't, and I think social conflicts escalate thereby.
Yeah, so if we can't agree on the facts, but we can make, then isn't there like this really crazy, it's almost as if society is going to split in two in a weird way.
Two?
People, or it'll split a gajillion ways, but I think
that's like saying the Death Star at the end of Star Wars just had a change of direction. That's where we go, right?
Are you a Star Wars guy?
I am.
We could do Star Wars.
I bought the album when I was a kid.
The original LP?
No, the original LP. You have
I have it in the green room there. I found the original LP
Man.
on the streets of New York City. I bought it for $3 like 10 years ago.
Wow.
It's the original 1977 LP.
That was my one.
And the poster that I have in there next to the makeup thing.